I will now hand the floor to our presenter, ProLiteracy Professional Development and Online Course Designer, Robin Morgan. Robin, take it away.
Thanks, Michelle. So good afternoon. Greetings from very hot, sunny Texas. I'm really glad all of you can be here to learn more about ProLiteracy's new workforce development collection, and more specifically, the 4 online student courses and the supporting instructor course. So we'll begin by taking a quick look at what we'll be covering today. First, we'll talk about the project, what it is, why it is important. We won't spend a lot of time here, but I do think it will be helpful for you to know what went into deciding what to include in each of the courses. We'll spend most of our time looking at the student courses, where you'll learn what's included in each course. You'll become familiar with the new look and feel of the student courses, and you'll see some slide examples. The student courses include setting employment goals, tailoring your resume, acing the interview, and communicating at work. We'll also take a quick look at the instructor course, what it looks like and what's included. And I'll show you how to access the new Workforce Development Collection and Education Network, or EdNet, as we call it for short. I'll show you where to set up a free account if you are a new Education Network user. And we'll take a look at how to set up free accounts for students so that they can log in and work independently in the student courses. And we've also built in some time at the end so you can ask questions. So can everyone hear me okay? I hope. Okay. So let's start with taking a look at the need we identified. Given our learner population and the impact the developing economy will have on their standard of living and on society as a whole, we have to identify best practices for moving students successfully into the workplace. And the students we serve often fall into 3 groups: students who lack the skills they need to get a job, students who have a job but don't know how to transition from a job to a career, and students who have difficulty keeping jobs because they lack the interpersonal and communication skills they need to be successful. 45% of students in ProLiteracy's member network are unemployed. In addition, 95% of ProLiteracy member programs provide English language instruction, and nearly 65% serve refugees. Many of these students are not prepared to enter the American workforce and successfully acclimate to workplace culture. And you can move the slide ahead. Okay, so the solution. This project was a collaborative effort. To get started, ProLiteracy established a national learning community of direct service providers and field experts. They were our boots on the ground. And we asked them to help us by giving us their input and providing support. And they, in turn, surveyed 285 students in their programs as well as employers in the community. They also surveyed their staff and volunteers. ProLiteracy also sent a service provider survey out to our network of member programs. We worked to survey our local and national audiences and set out to develop a series of online courses and support materials that would build capacity among community-based literacy and workforce development programs whose goal it is to prepare adults for the workplace. We used the results of the surveys to identify the areas that students felt they needed the most help in. The results also told us what was most important to students, to their instructors, and to their potential employers. We asked questions about time constraints, computer access, free printing services, and the types of activities they would find most useful. So that information was used to help us determine how the courses should be structured and the types of activities included. And the result was a series of 4 online direct-to-student courses and 1 supplemental instructor course. So this is one example of a question from the provider survey, and it indicates that 65%, or about 2 out of 3 service providers, are without a specific program in place for workforce preparation or advancement. We can move the slide ahead. So here's some additional survey results. When surveyed, both service providers and employers ranked effective workplace communication, basic computer skills, and soft skills as being of high importance. And if you look at the information on your screen, you'll note that the overall results are pretty much in sync. But notice the additional emphasis employers placed on critical thinking and time management skills. And this emphasis is reflected in the student courses. We can move forward. Also, an overwhelming majority of the service providers who were surveyed, almost 85%, responded that an online workforce preparation course would be useful. Initially, the plan was to create one student course and one instructor course, but after we looked at just how much material there was, we decided that there was just too much to cover and do it justice in a single student course. And we decided instead to begin with 4 foundational student courses and 1 instructor course, and then to add to the collection in the future. So we asked a lot of questions, and in total had 669 respondents, and that was made up of student service providers and employers who helped us make informed decisions on what we should include in the online courses. Their input also led us to give the student courses a new look with simpler navigation and less distractions. The 4 student courses were edited by a plain language expert, so we could make sure that the language is as simple as possible. And they all read at or around the 4th grade level. The amount of program or tutor support needed to successfully complete each course and the time it will take will vary depending on the skill level of each student. The instructor course format is going to look really familiar to those of you who have been in EdNet before. It contains all the same features you've become accustomed to. The instructor course really is not meant to be a how-to for teaching the courses. Rather, it focuses on areas with which we think students will have the greatest difficulty, and it offers ideas for additional activities. The instructor course is made up of 5 modules. There's an introduction module and 1 module that pertains to each of the 4 student courses. So let's take a quick look at what's covered in each of the student courses. In setting career goals, our focus was on helping students to reach beyond the jobs that they have now, the jobs their friends and family members have settled for in the past because they lack the skills, knowledge, or confidence to, branch out or to do something different. In the course Setting Career Goals, students learn to distinguish between a job and a career, complete a career self-assessment. They research careers, identify important factors when choosing a career. They differentiate between short and long-term goals and practice writing their own SMART career goals. And then they finish that off by creating a career plan. The emphasis in the Tailoring Your Resume course is more on helping students to move from one-size-fits-all, very generic resumes. And we want them to move to resumes that address employer-specific needs for a particular job or position. So we show students how to stand out in a crowd so they will be invited for an interview. Students in this course, students learn to customize their resume for specific job postings. They write about their skills and accomplishments. They use keywords to make their resume more likely to be accepted, and that includes by scanning software. So we do touch on that during the course. They learn to write a professional summary, identify their own core qualifications for a job, how to describe their work in education, write a cover letter, and how to use a resume template. So the Acing the Interview course is probably the biggest, beefiest of these courses. It is, the focus for this course is really, it's just practice, practice, and more practice. Students think ahead about the kinds of questions they might be asked, and then they tailor their answers based on job postings and what they know of the company, so that they can demonstrate to employers not only that they can think critically and answer questions, but to show employers that they've taken the time to prepare. So in this course, students research the companies where they want to apply for jobs, and they prepare for interviews. So this includes in-person interviews, phone interviews, and Skype interviews, as well as job fairs. They practice responses to common interview questions, practice responses to difficult questions about topics such as criminal record, gaps in employment and pay. And we did have somebody on our team who works in corrections, and she was extremely helpful when it came to knowing how to answer these questions, what information to include. And then she's also the driving force behind one of the things we will be rolling out, which would be an option to work on these courses offline. Students, let's see, I'm not sure where I left that. Students learn how to make a good impression, and they learn how to follow up after a job interview, even if they've been turned down. So always not stopping there, but just going on and thinking about the next job. So setting them up to just keep working and to keep moving forward. So we also heard from our learning community members often that their students, even when students had a job, that they were having problems on the job, they're getting into fights, they're having difficulty communicating with their bosses, and oftentimes they're being let go because of that poor communication. So they asked specifically for a course that would go beyond helping students to get a job and help them to develop the skills they need to keep the job. So in this course, Communicating at Work, students learn things like the importance of communicating effectively in both speech and writing, how to identify communication roadblocks, and then how to use active listening strategies. They also learn how to handle constructive feedback, not an easy topic for most of us, how to communicate as part of a team, and they learn tips for talking on the phone, leaving voicemail, and writing professional emails. And then we also touch on what nonverbal communication is and why that's important and how that can affect their time on the job. And you can move the slide, okay. So now that you know what's included in the courses, I'm going to take a look at what's changed on the student courses. And that starts here with the beginning of a home page. So you're going to see on the screen that we have the home page set up, which has buttons from which the students, will kind of begin. They begin the lessons, they begin the added practice, and then they're directed to return to the home page when they want to move from lesson to lesson. Each of the buttons you see here takes students to a different lesson, and you'll see the very top button, the Getting Started button, that's included in every one of the student courses. It's exactly the same slides in each one. The courses are set up so that if the student comes in the first time, they begin with the Getting Started, but if they've already taken a course, they're comfortable with the navigation, and then they don't have to go back and take the Getting Started lesson each time. They can skip it. You can move freely from lesson to lesson. And when I refer to the lessons, for example, on this slide, you have company research, types of interviews, interview questions, first impressions, and follow-up. And the first time students are working in the course, especially if they're working independently, then we encourage them to move through the lessons in the stacked order they're presented here. And then after they complete the lessons, then they can go to the added practice. So 3 of the 4 student courses have an added practice section. And that's always going to be identified by the larger, different color button at the bottom of the screen. Students can move through the lessons pretty quickly. They were designed so that people on the go or people who want to pop in, do something quickly, can get in there, and you can move through those lessons pretty fast. But where students are going to need to spend more time is in the added practice section. So that's where they would go. For example, that's where they research a company that they want to work for. They start actually building the skills and contextualizing and applying them to their own job search. The practice section is optional. You know, students can take any or all parts of this course, and tutors in turn can pop in and just work on the sections where the students need the most help. But most students are going to benefit by going into the added practice section. And you can move forward. Okay. So once you get inside the course, you'll notice the student courses are aesthetically quite different from our other courses. And that's mostly because we eliminated the additional text and the menu bar. We just wanted to make navigation more intuitive, maybe, you know, a little more in sync with the types of things they would see in other applications and courses they take. And this is one example that was taken from the Getting Started lesson in the Acing the Interview course. And you can see where it's one of several opportunities where students have to personalize the course a bit. And so in the screen, they would type in their name, they would type in the name of a place they want to work, and then we'll see in later slides here how that will pop up later on. So it makes it a little bit more of an individualized experience for the students. We have had some requests from members of the learning community and users asking us to add a progress bar to the student courses. I am in the process of making those changes, making quite a number of really great changes to these courses. Progress bar will be added when students are working on a desktop. It will be the traditional, bar that moves across the bottom of the screen that they can drag it, right or left to move around to different points in the slide. If they're on a smaller device like an iPad or a phone, then it shows up, it looks like a little wheel with an arrow. So you can pause, you can play, you can do things. But the point is then students, as the audio is continuing, they can tell how far they are along in the slide. So you can move forward. We'll talk a little bit about some of the other changes maybe a little bit later. So if you look at this slide, it demonstrates, and this is all part of that Getting Started section, but it demonstrates how students are going to move through the course. So you can see that they have the gold arrows on the bottom right and left. They use those forward and back arrows to move between the slides. They can click on the house button on the taskbar at the bottom. That's the little blue house. And that will bring them back to the home page at any point. They can also click on the exit, which is up in the upper right, if they want to leave the course. When the icons on the bottom in the taskbar are active, they are in color. So you see here is the little blue house, the green books, those are both active. The printer icon in the center is grayed out, not purple, so it is not active. The little green books, when they click on that, it visits the resource library, and that's giving students one-click access to all of the handouts. So in previous courses, you'd come upon a slide, you'd have the opportunity to download the resource, a handout or resource just from that slide. But here we've tried to make that a little bit simpler so that on every single slide, they can click on the green book and it brings up a screen with all of the handout options. Also included here, you see it says click the highlighted words to see a definition. Students can click on the highlighted words, and words they don't know, or words that we think are important, maybe words that that the plain language editor couldn't bring down to a 4th grade level. So we've tried to highlight those words in yellow and make them definition, or new vocabulary words. So students just click on the highlighted words, and then a pop-up definition box appears. And every one of those definitions is also on a definition handout that can be found in the resource library. If you look up at the top speech bubble here where it says, "Hi, Alicia," so you see that Alicia, her name, the user's name, Alicia, was inserted. In the prior slide, for example, Alicia also, say she entered where she wanted to work. Let's say she wanted to work at Google. That information will appear in a later slide. So students will type the information in, and then it pops up on a slide where it's applicable. And you can move forward. So in the last slide, we talked about the resource library. This is what that looks like. So these are all of the handouts that are included in the Acing the Interview student course. And then they would get to this by clicking those little green books that we saw on the previous slide. So students can download and read any resource anytime. It's the green books, I mentioned that to be able to click on them, that the icons need to be active, they need to be in color. This is active on every slide. So from any slide, students can, they can download any handout anytime. So where that helps is then if there's something that they remember that they worked with, but they're not sure where, they don't have to go through the whole course looking for that particular handout. I think it's also important to note here that individual lessons are not printer dependent. So even on this slide, students, if they were on the go and they wanted to look at a particular handout or resource, they can download it, they can read and download that resource, but they don't have to worry about being able to print it then. So, for example, if a student was working in the types of interviews lesson, they can complete the entire lesson without having access to a printer. And this matters in particular because one of the other changes in the new revision that'll be coming out soon is a responsive or fully scaled courses, so that when students, regardless of what device they're viewing on, whether it's an iPhone or a desktop, the entire slide shows, it's really easy to see. So, trying to make things really user-friendly and great for students who are maybe, on the bus or just have a few minutes before work or after work to go through the lesson. It's not really until you get to the added practice section that printing a specific worksheet does become more important. And that's just because the worksheet includes space for all of the activities, and then in many cases it serves as a template for future job searches. So, we do encourage students to, if they're working in the added practice section, to download it. But there, you can see where it says on the screen, it says interview worksheet. That is one worksheet that works for all the activities in the added practice section. So try to eliminate the number of times students who maybe don't have access to a printer all the time, make it easier for them so that they can go just do one print job and they have everything they need. You can move ahead. So here's an example of the kind of interactivities students might see when they're taking a course. Ways students interact with the courses include clickable images and buttons, audio and video example. There are pop-up layers with additional information and the pop-up definitions that I mentioned earlier. In the slide you see here, students would click on the images to learn more about what to look for when researching a company they might want to work for. And the pop-up boxes minimize the amount of text appearing on the screen and make it easier for learners to follow along and remember what they've learned. So again, just trying to give students information in kind of smaller bite-sized chunks. And you can move ahead. Every one of the lessons includes knowledge checks. So this is an example of one knowledge check from the follow-up lesson in Acing the Interview. The knowledge checks are primarily scenario-based, like what you see here. And in all cases, students can answer as many times as they need to, and feedback is provided for all answers, and it is complete feedback. It's not just, yes, you know, you're great, you got it right, or no, that's not correct. They will get enough feedback that hopefully will help them to make the right choice on the next one, but they can try as many times as they need to. Whenever students have an incorrect answer, then they will be prompted to try again, and there's a button there. When they click try again, it takes them right back to this slide. Correct answers, they click continue, and then it moves them on to the next slide automatically. And the questions aren't difficult. They are not meant to trip students up. They are simply meant to check their understanding and hopefully allow them to experience success as they work their way through the course. And if you ever find, if any of you are using the courses and you find that any of your students are struggling with the same, they tend to struggle with the same questions over and over, then, you know, please let me know. And we can just take a look at whether that's because they are developing the skills they need to answer the question, we haven't represented that clearly, or maybe the question just needs to be rewritten. And you can move forward. So I mentioned the added practice section earlier, and this is where students apply what they've learned about setting goals, creating a resume, or acing an interview. And this is where they're going to take all that information and they're going to apply it to their own lives and their own employment needs. All the activities here just reinforce what they've learned and give them the option to prepare for their own job search or interview. So if you look at the example on the screen, this is from the Setting Career Goals course. And you'll notice here, it gives students an option to begin in one of two ways. So they can either begin by researching careers. So if they are starting from scratch and they're not sure what they want to do, they can just click the forward arrow and that takes them to the next slide and they begin by researching careers. If they've already decided on what they want to do, let's just say they know they want to be a nurse. That's it. There's not something else in consideration. Then what we do is give them the option to click on the Set Goals button so they can skip the career research and go straight to setting goals. Also, if you look at the second bullet point here, where it says use the worksheet to plan your career as a nurse or another career you're interested in, that's just one more example of another place where students would have, entered in when asked and prompted, what do you want to do? What kind of job do you want to have? This student and said they wanted to become a nurse, that comes forward. It's not a big thing. It's just another small way to personalize and to help, make the course more reflective of the student's own interests. So you can go ahead. So the topics where you'll spend the most time are going to vary depending, obviously, on the skills and experience of the students you're working with. These courses, they aren't the end-all, be-all, but what we've tried to do is just give you a template of sorts, a way to work through in a logical manner. You can either be working with students and, take everything in its entirety, thinking, or you can just go in and you can work on the topics or areas where the students need the most help. If you've ever used the New Readers Press resource work-wise, then you will see a lot of similarities between the courses and the book series. So again, we've included highlights and basic activities here to get you started, but if you need additional activities, you're not sure what else to do, you just need other ways to reinforce what the students have learned, I strongly recommend the WorkWise series, but you do not have to buy, you don't have to buy materials to use this course, and there are a lot of good online materials and free materials, but WorkWise is going to put everything in one place for you, and I do think you probably would find it helpful, as far as supplementing your lesson planning. So all of these can be found at newreaderspress.com, and there are some other great resources there too. And go ahead. So the Instructor Course. As I mentioned earlier, the Instructor Course, which is called Preparing Adults for the Workplace, it's a supplemental course for teachers who are using the four direct-to-student courses with their students. It contains an introduction module and then one module that is dedicated to each of the courses. And the Instructor Course is loaded with resources. There are 18 handouts in the Instructor Course, 15 audio and video examples. There are multiple links to outside resources, and there is a discussion board. There is only a single discussion board, just so that when you go in to use the course, I just didn't want too much of your experience to be dependent on the number of other people who are in there at the same time. But it's nice to have at least one place where you can go and you can hear maybe the ideas, or you can touch base with other tutors. You could ask them questions about resources, what they're doing, what works for them. So it's a good way to connect with your peers. Okay, we'll go forward. So those of you who have worked in Education Network before and have gone in and taken any courses are going to notice that this looks very much like what you are used to seeing. So for those of you who are new, I'll just highlight quickly some of the features in the Instructor Course. So on the left-hand side, you have a slide menu. And of course, you can go through there. Not only does it show you, for example, this slide is slide 1.5 from the introduction. So you can monitor your own progress, but it also would give you the chance to say, hey, you know what? We wanted to work on action verbs today. So where was that slide? Oh, okay, there it is. It's slide 3.4. So you could just click on 3.4. That would take you to the slide that's adding action verbs. So that's one of the key features. You'll see the progress bar at the bottom. I described that earlier, but that's what a progress bar looks like. It allows you to know when the slide audio is done. You can advance the audio by dragging that, and it also allows you to replay the slide. And then you have single-click navigation that allows you here to adjust the volume and to use the next and previous buttons to move forward and back between slides. Just like the student course, you can click exit at any time. It's in the upper right corner, and that will take you out of the course. Whenever you exit one of these courses, the program or the system is going to save. It's kind of put a marker about where you were, what you were working on. So the next time you log in, you're going to be prompted to say whether you want to pick up where you left off or whether you want to go back to the beginning. So you will have that choice. In the Instructor Course, all of the links and the handouts are on a specific slide. I may be adding and creating. We'll try to get those all in one place for you, so you also have a single click place, probably in the Workforce Development Collection folder, a place where you could go to one resource where you can access everything, so that you, like the students have the benefit of not having to go all through the course to look for something that you saw, but you're not sure where. Other thing I'll point out in the instructor course, if you look at the menu on the left-hand side, in the gray bar right next to menu, it says Notes. And that's where you can click that Notes tab, and then you can read the slide notes. So basically, it's just going to be the text version of the slide audio. But, I'm very visual like that, and sometimes I can listen to things, but I have trouble focusing on it, and it's really helpful for me to click on the notes button so that I can see and read it and just kind of go over it in my own way. So just addressing different learning styles and what works best for each person. And you also, for those who are sight impaired, you can also use the screen reader for these courses. So you can go forward. So how do we get to all of these courses? The courses are free, but the only caveat is that you do have to have a ProLiteracy Education Network account, and we call that EdNet for short. If you already have an EdNet account, and this is not to be confused with a ProLiteracy membership, they are two separate things. You do not have to have a ProLiteracy membership to have an EdNet account, although we do strongly encourage you to have one for all of the other great features. But, you can, for those of you who already have an account, you can browse the resources like you've already always done. Recently, you can't see it in this snapshot, but recently we did add a hamburger menu to make navigation a little bit easier. So that would be 3 little lines or bars up in the upper right corner. And you just click on the hamburger menu in the upper right and click Menu, Resources, and then if you look below Resources down, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the 8th one down under Resources, you'll see where it says Pitney Bowes Workforce. If you click on that, then that takes you right to the Pitney Bowes Workforce collection. And I have another slide that'll show you what that looks like when you get in there. So this is the Workforce Development Collection is just going to be a nice, easy place to find not only these courses, but any other workforce-related courses or resources and materials. That's where we're going to put them. That's where we'll keep adding things to, so it just makes it easier for you to navigate. And go on. Okay. So I mentioned you have to have an EdNet account. If you don't already have an EdNet account, you can use the shortcut that's provided here. To get here, all you need to do is just type in proliteracyednet.org/workplace into your browser, and then you use one of the buttons at the bottom of the screen, at the bottom of the page to create an account. So we're going to take a look at that now just to show any of you who don't have an EdNet account exactly how easy it is now. Todd did a great job of putting this together to make it easier for people to get in and set up accounts.
Robin, while Jennifer's navigating to that site, we have a couple questions I thought I'd share. One person asked, let's see, Stacy asked, what are soft skills?
So soft skills, big question. I could give you a long answer, but I'm going to say we're talking more about, the skills that students would, or that employees use on the work, and I'm like just totally drawing a blank right now, sorry. Let me think of a good example here. Wow, I'm so sorry. I'm totally drawing a blank. I will send you a coherent answer to that question. My apologies. Sometimes I don't switch gears really, really well.
Okay, we have some other questions. This is from Barbara, and she asked 2 good questions. Do you offer tips on appearance, and do you discuss tattoos with students? We do. The answer to that, and thankfully I have an answer for you, the answer to that is yes to both. So appearance, definitely, we offer not only tips for appearance, but we go into the what should you do and the what you should not do. We give
students a couple of different resources, places where they can go online to get help and get more information. We also refer them, ask them to talk to their tutor, job coach people. So we do go into that pretty extensively. We also talk about tattoos, piercings, all of that kind of thing. And we talked about workplace culture too. So for example, if we were talking about tattoos and piercings, telling students that, as much as they may like their independence and they want to express their individuality, that's fine. But, employers sometimes have very specific requirements for being on the job. And if you're bothered by those requirements, that's probably not the right fit. So that's, in a nutshell, how we address those too.
Thanks, Robin. Here's one more. Actually, we have another two after this. What's the average time a student will need to complete the courses? I'm sure it varies by student, but maybe you can give a range.
Yeah, and it really, you're absolutely right. It does vary depending. It does vary depending on the student's skill level and the amount of, foundation work you have to do. So whether you have, a lot of time to spend on vocabulary or just, talking about the different concepts. I have been through these enough times doing, let me think. We are going to post, and this is something I just talked to Scott about, we are going to post the amount of time that it takes, like someone like you or I, to just click through the course to try to give you that information. I would say is that a student who was sitting on, that had a long bus ride and they were going through like the gold course, as far as the lessons, not the added practice, but just the lessons go, they could probably click through that part of the course in, 45 minutes or so, maybe less. They're not really long courses. So, we tried to keep that pretty simple and to keep it pretty quick.
Okay,
Michelle,
so, I'm sorry, say again. Say again, Robin.
I'll go back quickly to soft skills, and I just really had a total meltdown there for a minute. Soft skills. So here's where we're talking about leadership skills, teamwork. Teamwork is a big one. Communication skills, and we have a whole course that's dedicated to communication skills, problem-solving skills, work ethic, interpersonal skills, and in the communication course, the knowledge checks, as I mentioned, most of the knowledge checks in the lessons themselves are scenario-based, and that's where we try to just come up with situations where students commonly find themselves in those situations, and then help them to work through those situations. We obviously aren't going to hit on every one of the situations, but I think what it does do is helps tutors to start a conversation. So it helps tutors, job coaches, teachers. It just helps you to start a conversation. And, especially if you're working with a class, once you come up with, with one scenario, students are usually pretty quick to jump in and offer things that have happened to them and things they've experienced. So there are a lot of really great activities you can build off of the information that we give you in that course. So I hope that's a little bit more helpful, and I apologize for my brain fart. Just really.
Does it get so detailed as to deal with things like handshakes and eye contact, Robin, or that's too detailed?
Yes, it does. No, it does.
Oh, okay.
Those are the types of things that we look at would be, cultural differences. So, for example, we go to an interview here. We, as a culture, tend to, stick our hand out. We are very forthright about learning how to do a nice, firm handshake, but we also address the fact that that's just not always, right for everyone. And I think we covered that in the communication course. I'll double check on that because I'm going through making some modifications to the courses and adding some new really terrific features. And if we haven't fully developed that, then maybe I'll add a little bit more information on that as well.
Okay. We've got a lot of good questions coming up. Do some of the examples refer to jobs other than office-based work?
Yes. So the focus with these courses really isn't, try to stay away from pigeonholing the students. So as I mentioned earlier, we really want students to think in terms from the very beginning when they're setting their goals, to think in terms of what they want to do and what it will take to get there. And then how do I get there? What are the steps I'm going to need to take? What are my short-term goals, long-term goals? We want students to get away from just thinking in terms of, I should get a job in an office, or I should get a job in a restaurant. There's nothing wrong with those jobs, and if that's what someone, someone in food service is what they love to do, that's great. But too often we have students who they just go after what they think is attainable. They look at what their friends and family members have done before them, and they look at the jobs that they've had in the past. So what we're trying to do is encourage students not to just fall into that, but to think about what they're good at, what they really like. So we've included a number of skills assessments here that they can take that will help them to kind of narrow that down. Some students have very specific ideas about what they want to do. Other students, it's really about just helping them sometimes to explore, maybe, getting in there and having them take a skills assessment and then talking about the types of jobs or careers that come up. That's another thing, is we really want students to start thinking in terms of career versus dead-end job. So I hope that answers that question. If not, I'll try to elaborate on it. Are you still there?
Hey, Robin, yeah, we're getting a lot of questions about accounts. So I wanted to confirm, is this the page you want us to go to, and then we can show people from here the links at the bottom?
Yes, please. Yep, go down
Okay.
to the bottom of the page. Okay. So if you do not have an EdNet account, this is where you want to go. So you'll see that you have options. So there's a button there. You're going to choose one of the three buttons. If you have a ProLiteracy membership, or if the agency or organization you work with has an account, then you want to have the account number, and then you can go in, click that button, you'll go in and create your account from there. But as I mentioned earlier, you don't have to have a ProLiteracy account, or let's just say you think that the organization you work with has one, but you don't have the account number handy, and you just want to get in there and you want to get going on EdNet. Just go to this green non-members, and Michelle, you're probably going to shoot me maybe for saying that. I hope that doesn't make more work for you on the back end, but you can go here. So you see you have a button where you can learn more about membership, and then you can find out what the benefits would be. Membership is very inexpensive. Or you can just go in, click create account, and then most of the resources we have on Education Network are free. These courses are free courses. The exception here, the tutor training is not included in the free courses. So there are some things that you're not going to be able to get to if you don't have a membership.
Yes, just to add to what Robin's saying, I mean, membership allows you access to certain restricted resources. We have an area on Education Network called Member Central, and we're putting resources there that are just for members. So with those, you would need to create your account using that custom form for members and enter a member number in order to access those. But these particular courses are free to everybody, so you could just create a regular Education Network account to view these courses if you wanted.
And Michelle, could they then, if let's just say later on they wanted to go back and add like their organization's member number, they could go in and just do that?
Yes, they can. The verification process will take a little while, so they'll have to give it about 6 hours. But they can add it, and then once the system has had time to verify that that is a current membership, then they will be
Mhm.
changed internally in the system to a member account, and they'll be able to access those materials.
Okay, sounds good. I probably should just let you answer this whole question because this is your area. You're the membership guru.
That's okay, because it's really about Education Network, and we just have that partition where we have resources just for members that live on Education Network. So, and again, for purposes of this course, though, I don't want anybody to miss out. You don't have to be a member to access the Pitney Bowes workforce courses. So if they want to dive right in and just create an account, they can do that and create a non-member account, and then later they can always join or add their member number, so it doesn't stop them from making a change later on.
Yep, and we've made it as easy for folks as possible to get in and, just go to proliteracyednet.org/workforce. Just put that in your browser. That'll bring you to this page. All you have to do is just go to the bottom of the page, and then there are the buttons, and that's really all you need to get in here and set up your account. So let's go to the next screen in the presentation, and then from there we'll talk about how students are going to access the courses, because I know there was a little confusion there in the beginning about how students would get into the courses. Go to the next slide. Okay, so I mentioned some confusion to start with. Students need free accounts too. So in theory, if you were working with a student, you could log in through your account, but ideally what you really should do is set up an account, a free account with your student or students. I put the steps on the screen just to show that it's a pretty simple process for, to set up an account. But we've made it, again, we've tried to make this even easier for you. So on the right of your screen, what you're seeing is a sample of the resources that are currently in the workforce collection. So if you go to the second row, the first, the gentleman with his hand reaching out to shake hands, you'll notice that there is a resource there called Preparing Adults for the Workplace Student Flyer. The 2-page flyer, you can print one or both pages depending on, you can use the 2 pages to promote with students, tutors, anybody promote using the student courses. Or you could just print page 2, and page 2 is instructions for setting up an account. It also includes instructions for logging in the first time, after the students, let's say they go in the one time, you help them set up an account. Then the next time they want to log in, it's going to be a different process. So it's going to explain how to get back in there once you've already set your account up. And it even has a place for students to write down their passwords. So again, we are really going to try to get in the habit of trying to make it as easy for you to find the things you need. This is the same place where at some point in the not too distant future, I hope to add a, kind of a one-stop shopping sort of place where you can access all of the handouts and resources from the instructor course, since you don't have that nice little, book button that just takes you to everything. This would be where you would go to find that. So that's pretty much it. So Michelle, do you have more questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, you said you were going to get back to everybody with the approximate time for the courses. Is that correct?
I will. I will go through and actually time it. Basically it would be the amount of time it would take you or I to go through something like this, and then you could, adjust it accordingly. But yes, I will go through, figure how long it takes to just work your way through the courses, answer the questions, and then I can come up with an approximate. And then we're going to be posting times anyways. That will become probably part of the course narrative at some point. It probably will become a part of the instructor course narrative in the introduction section, so that instructors have an idea of how much time it takes to work through the whole thing.
Okay.
So
I think we
I haven't got to that point yet because we're still working on making revisions to these courses. So I am going to be a little bit of a spoiler here. I think I mentioned earlier I'm making already some changes. So a couple of the things you can expect, I mentioned adding that progress bar to the student courses. We got some new software that's allowing us to create courses that are fully scaled. So what that means is when students are on a desktop, obviously everything looks great, it's nice, it's big, but then you get onto somebody's little teeny iPhone, and then all of a sudden, it can be a challenge to see everything, and you've got to keep dragging things around to see all of the screen content. I am working on that right now. That is going to change. That'll all be fully scaled so that no matter what device you're on or your student is on, they're going to be able to see the whole screen. It's crisp, it's clean, it's all right there. And I just previewed the Acing the Interview course on my tiny iPhone, and it was a beautiful thing. Everything fit beautifully. It's easy to click. It was easy. There's even I practiced like a drag and drop activity, and everything worked quite nicely. So again, this is thinking about making it easy for students and tutors to access the courses from anywhere, anytime, and fit them into a busy schedule or fit them into your lifestyle whenever you have that downtime. And most students are not looking at things on desktops these days. They're looking at things on iPads and phones and that sort of thing. So I've also taken some of the content from the courses and some of the slides that had longer audio and they were a little bit more, maybe had a little more screen content, and I've busted those up and just made more simple, quick slides. Again, so it's easier for the students to digest so that they don't kind of zone out as they're listening. Oh, and then the big thing is that hopefully sometime this fall, we will be able to roll out an alternative so that if folks don't have a reliable internet connection, we'll have an option for them for working offline. It won't be free, but it should be very inexpensive. And again, it's just going to be great for anybody that's working in corrections, places like that. So, yeah, so some other things, but, look for those soon. I hope to have the changes made and have the new versions of these courses all cleaned up and beautiful. Hopefully, definitely by conference, and if not before, hopefully by the beginning of September.
All right, we got one or two more questions, and then we'll wrap up. Can you assign lessons to your students and track their completion through the teacher account?
Not at this time, no. Again, that's one of those things. We get that question. Had that question about like the tutor training that came up. That is something that we are looking into, and that's something that it's something I hope to be able to add at some point, but for now that is not a possibility.
Okay, and last question. Since we base testing on hours, actually these are two kind of combined questions. Can students get credit for the hours they do on their account? And is this only done at school for hours or home for hours?
I am not sure I followed the question.
Yeah, I'm going to ask for a clarification from Linda, but maybe you can say, since you base testing on hours, can they get credit for the hours they do on their account? I guess that's up to them.
That would be totally up to them. It's not something that we are monitoring. So the students from our end, you could assign the course to students, have them go in, but there's not really anything, I don't have a way in place for you to track what they've done. You could give them credit for the approximate amount of time, but then that, especially when you get into the added practice, which is where they really get doing the hands-on stuff, that's where, they're going to sit down, they're going to be doing research, and they're going to be writing their own interview questions based on the job they want to apply for and based on the what the job posting says the employer is looking for. They're going to be writing questions, practicing questions. That is, the amount of time that takes is totally dependent on, you know, the student's level, the skills you have to build just to get them to that point. I mean, that's going to vary from student to student. So unfortunately, I think all of that is going to fall on the shoulders of the teacher or tutor.
Okay, I think that's all we have time for. I'll just remind everybody that everyone who registered for this webinar will get a copy of the recording via email within 24 hours. And Robin, I think, do we have a slide with your contact info here in case people still have questions? Oops, I skipped right by it.
That's okay, but no, we don't, but I will give it to you. The very first slide has my name and position. That's not terribly helpful, that position.
Oh, there we go. Thank you for attending. Here we go. So if you want, you can contact Robin with any questions we didn't touch upon during this webinar. Feel free to contact her directly. She'll be happy to provide you with more information. You're also welcome to reach out to me directly if you have questions about membership. My email is msmith@proliteracy.org. So thank you very much, Robin, for an informative presentation today, and thank you everyone who attended for participating. We appreciated your terrific questions and hope you'll get a lot of value out of introducing this resource to your students.